Hey guys, tonight we slip away from the loud and the lit up. You find yourself barefoot on a sloping black sand shore where the air smells faintly of brine and plumeria. A soft wind sways the palm fronds above, and beyond them, the stars pour across the sky like scattered salt. No cruise ships, no condos, just you, the ocean, and the eerie calm of an island that seems to be holding its breath. You wander closer to the water's edge where a crescent-shaped stone wall snakes silently across the shallows. The lava rocks are cool and moss-slick, stacked by hands long gone. There's no fence, no floating buoys, no neon signs telling you what this place is. And yet something about it feels deliberate, familiar even, like a secret waiting patiently for you to ask the right question. Welcome to an ancient Hawaiian fish pond, or as the locals called it, a loko'ie. Built centuries before electricity, cars, or resort spas, these ponds were marvels of quiet engineering. You see, ancient Hawaiians didn't toss out nets at sea like action movie fishermen. No, they built the ocean into their village. They carved food systems from lava and tide. They turned fish into crops, and you, poor soul, are standing right on top of it. Now, you probably won't survive this, not because of sharks or angry ghosts, though those exist too, but because maintaining this system took serious patience, daily tending, deep respect, and a master's grasp of ecology without using the word ecology, of course. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment with where you're listening from and your local time. I love seeing where you all are dreaming from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start moving along the low wall, called a kuapa, which stretches farther than it first appears. At low tide, it almost seems to grow from the ocean itself. Some of these structures were over 1,000 feet long, stacked by hand stone upon stone without mortar, designed to gently trap seawater and form a brackish home for hungry fish. The genius. It looks like nature. It feels like nature. But it's a machine one that never hums, never clanks, never breaks, unless a tsunami decides to throw a tantrum. There's no plaque telling you who built it. That's the point. These fish ponds weren't just food factories. They were community projects maintained by lineages, watched by chiefs, and honored in chants. Historians still argue whether the idea originated from early Polynesian settlers or was refined entirely in Hawaii. But either way, the technology became unmistakably Hawaiian. You pause where the wall curves into a small inlet. A pair of birds, AO stilts, wade silently through the shallows, their impossibly thin legs looking like drawn lines in the moonlight. You wonder how something this delicate could hold fish, until you notice the subtle slope of the inner pond, the carefully chosen boulders breaking waves, just enough to let silt settle and algae flourish. It's a buffet for baby fish. They wander in, confused, but happy, nibbling like kids in a candy store. And just like that, the fish pond begins to explain itself. Most people don't realize it, but these ponds weren't passive traps. They were living systems, half garden, half aquarium, managed by observation, intuition, and a bit of prayer. Fish were farmed not by force, but by offering them exactly what they wanted: safety snacks and space. You don't need a spear when the fish invite themselves to dinner. As you rest beside the wall, the salt water laps softly at your ankles. Imagine being one of the workers here back in, say, the 1400s. Your job might be to clear out the rocks that crabs keep knocking loose, or to watch for a telltale shimmer that mullet are schooling near the gate. No spreadsheets, no late-night Slack pings, just tide charts memorized in your bones and a deep sense of rhythm with the earth. There's a common belief, spread mostly by people who haven't stood where you're standing, that indigenous technologies were primitive. But here, in the lazy swirl of warm tidewater, you start to see how misleading that is. The fish pond doesn't shout. It whispers intelligence. An intelligence so tuned to its place, it never needed to shout. Quirkier still. Each fish pond had a personality. Some had names, others had songs. One famous pond on Molokai supposedly had a resident guardian mo. Yes, a shape-shifting lizard goddess who'd flood the banks if people broke the kapu or sacred rules. Whether she was real or metaphor, you don't ask. The moon is bright tonight, and the pond is watching. A mosquito whines near your ear, reminding you that this system isn't all gentle lullabies. Maintaining it meant constant labor, cutting back overgrowth, rebuilding walls after storms, feeding the fish when algae was low, and sometimes chasing away birds thieves or mischievous kids who thought it'd be funny to toss coconuts into the makaha. But tonight, it's just you and the pond. Quiet, old, full of secrets. You ease along the curving stone path, careful not to slip on the moss-slick rocks. The air smells of damp salt and something earthy, maybe the distant bloom of seaweed or the faint decay of time. The water inside the pond is calm, glassy, a mirror reflecting the sky. Outside, waves break noisily on the reef, but in here, silence, control, intent. This is no ordinary patch of shoreline. It's a loco. I have the pride of ancient Hawaiian aquaculture, and now you're beginning to see it. These ponds weren't just lucky tide pools or fluke formations. They were engineered, built, shaped, and nurtured by people who knew fish behavior better than most modern marine biologists. The first thing you notice as you move deeper into the system is how gently the wall slopes. From sea to shore, the stones form a deliberate angle, allowing ocean water to seep in slowly, like tea steeping through loose leaves. That brackish mix, it's perfect for raising fish. It keeps the water oxygenated, lets in plankton, and discourages big predators. The wall doesn't keep the ocean out. It invites it in, but on terms the farmers control. And then you see it off to one side, a small wooden structure nestled in the wall, a makaha. You squat beside it, watching water pulse through the narrow slats. This isn't a gate in the sense you're used to. It doesn't open and shut like a drawbridge. It breathes. Water flows in and out with the tide, and with it come the fish. Here's the clever trick. The slats of the makahaha are spaced wide enough for juvenile fish mullet milkfish, sometimes tiny a-hole to swim into the pond from the sea. But once they've grown big and plump on the feast inside, their bodies are too wide to slip back out. Nature's version of a one-way buffet. They come in young, eat like kings, and stay for dinner. As dinner, you lean in closer. There's something mesmerizing about it. the way the water pulses, the rhythmic gurgle, the occasional silver flash of fish flicking through. It's simple and brilliant. No rope traps, no bait, no nets. Just architecture and instinct. Historians still argue whether this was learned through slow, painful trial and error, or whether knowledge of fish pond construction came fully formed with early Polynesian settlers. Some believe it was carried across thousands of miles of ocean in memory chants and oral instruction, passed down from seafarers who mastered tides the way others master chess. Either way, by the time Hawaiian society reached its peak, there were over 400 documented fish ponds scattered across the islands. Some were vast sprawling systems with multiple makaha and entire village economies built around them. Others were small, intimate, more like backyard aquariums with a touch of magic. They had names like Kaloko Loko Waka and Kuapa Kunaka, and each one served not just a practical need, but a spiritual and political role too. And yes, they were owned. You glance around, suddenly aware of how your quiet presence would have once needed permission. Fish ponds weren't open access buffets. They were overseen by alii, the chiefly class who managed them like living treasure chests. Fish were currency, protein, prestige. To tend a pond was a noble calling, something between farming and stewardship, with a hint of priesthood baked in. In fact, some chiefs would gift ponds to loyal retainers or control entire coastal districts based on their fish pond yields. Imagine inheriting a patch of ocean that literally grows food under your watch. No fertilizer, no plows, just knowledge, salt water, and patience. You find a smooth lava rock and sit. A school of mullet dances below the surface, gliding in slow loops like sleepy ballet dancers. It's strangely peaceful. But don't be fooled. These fish aren't wild. They've been invited, conditioned, and fed. The pond's algae nourishes them naturally. But on lean days, pond keepers might toss in cooked taro-mashed breadfruit or fermented seaweed to keep them fat and content. Like any good landlord, the goal was to make them stay put and grow delicious. And here's a fun, fringe tidbit for you. There are whispered stories, never quite proven, of ancient Hawaiians training fish to associate certain sounds with feeding. Claps, drum beats, even specific songs. Some elders claimed that when they sang to the pond, the fish would come. Whether that's conditioning or myth, it doesn't matter. The fish came. You gaze up at the stars. Everything here feels tuned to something ancient and slow. The wall doesn't argue with the sea, it negotiates. The makaha doesn't trap, it entices. And the fish in their sleepy circling seem content to forget the wild. As you get up to walk again, you imagine trying to explain this to a modern engineer. We grow fish by not chasing them. We just build a place so nice they never leave. Somewhere in the distance, a wave breaks. But here inside the pond, everything holds. You shuffle forward along the inner curve of the kuapa, the stone wall's edges now barely visible under the rising tide. The moon casts a pale path across the water, and there, half submerged in shadow, is another makaha. This one's older, more weathered, with slats bowed slightly inward. From decades, maybe centuries of salty breath. You crouch again, curiosity tugging at your sleeves. It's quiet, except for the pulse of water moving through the gate, steady as a heartbeat. Then flash a blur of silver darts past. Another and another. You squint. Are they going into the pond or out? That's the dance, isn't it? This isn't just a gate. It's a filter, a selective portal designed with absurd precision. You finally understand how ancient Hawaiians managed to farm fish without nets, boats, or fancy contraptions. They just built a door. And got the timing right. Here's how it works. Tiny fish larvae and juveniles come in naturally with the tide drawn by the warmth, the stillness, the algae buffet waiting inside. But once they feed and grow, the makaha becomes their prison, gently, quietly, and without resistance. It's not that they're forced to stay. It's that they can't leave. And if you're thinking, surely some figured it out, you'd be right. A few clever fish did escape, slipping between slats or flinging themselves over shallow walls during storms. But for the most part, the system worked. The fish stayed and grew, and eventually became lunch. It's an elegant trap, a kind one, and it required constant observation. You spot a bundle of woven rope beside the gate. Kapa cordage, maybe once used to tie the makaha's frame into place. You imagine the caretaker who placed it here checking the gate before sunrise, nudging debris away with a long stick, muttering something about lazy fish and high tide. In Hawaiian culture, these caretakers had a name: Kia'i Loko Pond Guardians. Their job was part scientist, part farmer, part spiritual intermediary. They didn't just maintain the pond, they communed with it. It's said that a good Kia'i Loko could look at the way the water moved through the slats and know if the fish were healthy. They could hear a splash and tell if it was a mullet spawning or a crab skittering, or worse, a hungry predator. You, on the other hand, just hear water. Still, you lean in. You try to listen the way they once did. There's something beautiful about it, isn't there? Not just the engineering, but the trust. This gate doesn't bully the sea. It cooperates. It creates boundaries just porous enough to allow life in, but stable enough to cultivate abundance. Historians still debate whether these wooden gates were ever standardized. Were they all made from ohia wood? Did the slat spacing vary by fish species? Or did different islands evolve their own quirks over time? Oral traditions suggest incredible variety with each community, fine-tuning their makahaha like a musical instrument. You run your fingers along the edge of one slat, smooth, salt-worn. It's warped from years of tide cycles, sun, and the gentle chewing of time. No nails, just lashings. The ocean was always just one storm away from breaking it, and yet it survived. And the fish, well, the fish adapted too. Take the amama, or striped mullet, a favorite for these ponds. They're naturally inclined to travel between fresh and salt water, so this brackish setup. A luxury resort. Inside the pond, they grow fat on algae and pondweed. Outside, they'd be dodging sharks and currents. No wonder they didn't rush the exit. And when the Kia'i Loko deemed them ready, there was no dramatic spearfishing. Just a quick trap. Near the gate, maybe a split bamboo net called a ha'aku. And the evening meal was sorted. Efficient. Respectful. Sustainable. You reach down, brush away, a piece of seaweed clinging to the wood. The water eddies dark and clear. And suddenly, you wonder, was this entire concept born not out of hunger, but patience. It's so slow, so measured, no adrenaline, no conquest, just invitation. And the weirdest part? It worked. You remember reading once that Captain Cook's men were stunned at how well fed the Hawaiians were. These weren't desperate islanders scraping coconuts. They were engineers, gardeners of the sea. And the makaha was their quiet masterpiece. A thought drifts across your mind. What if we built more things like this, not systems of control, but systems of cooperation? Gates that let in the wild, but gently held the parts we needed. You smile. Maybe that's too dreamy. But tonight, by the soft slosh of water, through a fish gate built before your great-great-grandparents were born, it doesn't sound so far-fetched. You rise, legs tingling from crouching. The tide is higher now. The makaha gurgles louder, almost humming. You step away, careful not to disturb the flow. Behind you, fish flicker. Ahead, another bend. In the quappa waits in moonlight. You keep walking. The sound of the water soft and rhythmic beside you, like the ocean is quietly applauding your curiosity. Around the next bend, in the quappa, you spot something odd. A series of small bundles resting on a stone platform above the waterline. You climb closer. Someone's left offerings. A folded leaf bowl with a pinch of pa'akai sea salt. A wedge of taro. A string of faded flowers. It's a clue, a quiet one. These weren't just fish farms. They were also places of ceremony. The ancient Hawaiians didn't separate food from spirit work from worship. You couldn't farm fish without also honoring the forces that made them. The fish pond was alive not just biologically, but cosmologically. Tonight it's empty. No priest in sight. No conch shell booming, but you can still feel the weight of presence. This isn't a museum. It's a stage that once echoed with chants. You turn from the offering and look back at the water. A swirl of bubbles breaks the surface. Probably just a mullet. Or maybe something else. It's hard to say when belief begins and ends in a place like this. Ancient Hawaiians believed in aqua, gods of sky, sea, and stone, and many fish ponds were built with their favor in mind. Some were dedicated to Ku'ula, the god of fishermen. Others honored local mo'o spirits, shape-shifting lizard deities said to guard fresh water and punish greed. You imagine a caretaker waking before dawn, whispering a chant while placing taro on the quappa. Not because it fed the fish, but because it fed the balance, the harmony. In Hawaiian culture, this balance was called pono. It meant doing things rightly, living in alignment with nature, with each other, with yourself. Historians still argue whether every fish pond had its own dedicated rituals, or whether those practices were more universal across islands. Some chants survive today, though their meanings are partially lost. Others live only in family lines, passed down in hushed songs and gestures you'd never notice unless someone told you what to look for. You take a deep breath. Even now, the idea of farming fish feels sterile next to what this really is. It's not rows of pens or frantic feeding schedules. It's relational. You give, you wait, and if the gods approve, they give back. And they didn't just give fish. You spot a low structure nearby. A crumbling platform of stone and thatch half-eaten by time. It may have once been a hail kuai, a small shelter for storing tools or preparing feed. Nearby, buried in silt, lies a carved trough. This wasn't just about catching fish. It was about sustaining them. Some caretakers brewed feed from cooked taro or fermented breadfruit known as mashed ulu. Others grew pondweed or carefully cultivated limu algae that mullet adored. Imagine feeding fish cooked meals. No, really. They did that. You stifle a laugh. It's like running a seafood Airbnb with complimentary breakfast. You kneel beside the trough and run your hand across its edge. Still smooth. Still here. You wonder how many hands have done the same grinding feed, tossing morsels into the water while chanting gently, calling the fish like pets. This wasn't dominance. It was caretaking. Stewardship. And it worked across generations. You think back to modern systems, how we mass-produce protein cram, livestock, into pens, dump grain, into ocean cages. There's no taro offerings there. No salt tributes. Just numbers, margins, and waste. But here, in this quiet cove, where lava met salt, the system was closed. Fish fed, on algae people fed, on fish people fed, the land. The land fed the fish again. Cyclical. Sustainable. And so elegant that it didn't even need reinventing for centuries. A sudden rustle behind you wings. You turn and spot a night heron perched on a rock eyeing the pond. Its head bobs waiting. The birds know too. They've been watching this system longer than we've studied it, and sure, not everything was harmonious. Sometimes birds stole too many fish. Sometimes the ponds dried out in drought. Sometimes storms smashed walls and scattered fingerlings like spilled pearls. The caretakers adapted, rebuilt, offered more salt, sang louder. Life wasn't perfect, but it was participatory. You start to see this pond not just as infrastructure, but as a relationship. A woven mesh of rocks, fish people, songs, rituals, and tides. You don't control it. You tend it. You walk the wall like a gardener walks his rows, alert, listening, present. That's probably the real reason nets weren't needed. Not because they lacked the skill, but because the net was already here. Built from stone and trust, you step back from the offering platform and glance once more at the little salt bundle. Its edges are damp from sea spray, but it still glistens in the moonlight. Not a transaction. Just thanks. You keep walking the stones of the quappa warm beneath your feet, despite the creeping tide. Ahead, you see a figure, a statue perhaps. But no, it's too alive in the moonlight. You approach slowly, heart oddly steady, as if some part of you already knows what this is. Set beside a small rise in the wall stands a carved idol, worn from wind and salt. It's simple. A squat figure, arms at its sides, eyes large and round, like it's never blinked. This isn't a tourist relic. This is a key, a representation of one of the gods, or perhaps a guardian spirit, not for fear, for reverence. And suddenly, you remember fish ponds weren't managed by commoners alone. They were often overseen by alii, the chiefly class, and these men and women weren't just political leaders. They were spiritual ones, philosopher chiefs, if you will. It was their duty to ensure abundance not just for status, but for survival. It's easy to forget how powerful that made them. Controlling a fish pond wasn't like owning a restaurant. It meant owning the means to feed an entire village year-round without depending on unpredictable ocean voyages. It meant you could command loyalty, settle disputes, even trade influence between islands. You step off the won, wander toward the inland side of the pond, where a clearing spreads out under a grove of hala trees. Here, the Ali might have stood, arms crossed, face unreadable, watching the tides, listening to the caretakers report on the fish, the storms, the omens. One of the most famous examples is Loko o Waimanalo, a massive fish pond on Oahu, said to have supported hundreds of people through its yield alone. The chiefs who commanded it held immense prestige. Their success wasn't measured in gold or land, but in fish weight per lunar cycle. You chuckle. Imagine measuring power by how many mullets showed up after the new moon. But it wasn't all fish counts. These alii were expected to maintain balance pono. If the pond's fish thinned, it wasn't just a logistical failure. It might mean the chief had fallen out of favor with the gods or with the land itself. Everything was interconnected ecosystem leadership ritual. Historians still argue over how rigidly this authority was maintained. Some accounts suggest the ali'i micromanaged daily operations. Others hint at a more ceremonial role, letting Kiai Loko handle the details while they handled the stars, politics, and offerings. You imagine the chief walking the pond's perimeter with a kahuna, a priest murmuring a chant while dipping a tie leaf into salt water. Maybe they debated strategy. Maybe they read the cloud patterns. Or maybe they just stood in silence listening to the pond breathe. At your feet, a crab scuttles across a flat stone, startled by your presence. Even here, at the heart of something once deeply political, life continues in small, ancient rhythms. And yes, this was political. Power over fish was power over people. Fish ponds weren't communal in the modern sense. They were managed resources bound up in land rights and inheritance. If your family had a stake in a pond, your status rose. If you were caught poaching from another's pond, that could be a punishable offense. One oral tale even tells of a man who tried to sabotage a rival's makahaha during the night and was turned into a sea slug for his greed. You're not sure how literal that is, but as you watch the moonlight glimmer on the water, the possibility doesn't seem too far-fetched. You continue, walking past another key, this one half buried in foliage. You pause to clear some vines, gently brushing its face. You wonder, did this pond have a name? Did it have a song? Many fish ponds did. Entire Malay chants were composed for specific loco, celebrating their abundance, their protectors, and their sacred stories. Singing to the pond wasn't entertainment. It was maintenance, an offering of breath and memory. You hum softly, unsure of the melody, letting your voice blend with the wind. A passing cloud dims the stars, and for a moment, you feel completely outside time. Maybe that's what made these systems so resilient. Not just the walls or the gates, but the culture that wrapped around them. The belief that caring for the pond was the same as caring for the people. And in return, the pond cared back. You reach another small structure, simple thatched, worn from decades of weather. Probably a resting shelter for the Kiai Loko, or a place where the alii might sit and speak with villagers. You step inside. Dust and leaves carpet the floor. There's no one here, and yet you feel watched. Not in fear, just noticed. A presence woven into stone water wind. Outside, the pond continues to ripple softly, its makahaha exhaling. The fish move beneath the surface, quiet-fed content. and above them, a network of human memory floats like mist. You wake with a start, or maybe you never really fell asleep. The air is heavier now, thick with humidity, and the first hints of sunrise. You've wandered farther than you meant to, past the inner wall of the pond, where the quappa fades into open lagoon. Out here, the ocean speaks in a louder voice. Waves break farther off against the jagged coral shelf that shields the pond like a sleeping warrior's arm. You stretch your back and glance seaward. There, just beyond the mouth of the pond, the water darkens, and not just from depth. A reef shark glides past in the shallows, silent as a whisper. Its dorsal fin cuts the water like a knife. It doesn't notice you or doesn't care. You freeze anyway. Out here, the balance of the fish pond no longer applies. This is the wild edge where farming ends and survival begins. And the ancient Hawaiians knew this line well. The sea beyond the pond wasn't just dangerous. It was kapu, forbidden sacred, or restricted. Certain stretches of reef were off limits for fishing during spawning seasons. Others were reserved for ali'i, or guarded by powerful kapu, that if broken could bring famine, or something worse. You step back from the shore instinctively, the way a child steps away from a boiling pot. That shark, sleek, patient, eternal, isn't evil, but it's a reminder. The pond was a sanctuary. Beyond it, the ocean plays by different rules, and those rules brutal. You scan the horizon. There's no fence, no buoys, just color changes and gut instinct. Ancient fishermen knew this by heart. They read the reef like scripture, and when they cast lines or nets outside the pond, they did so with reverence and caution. One story tells of a fisherman who ignored a seasonal kapu and took fish from a restricted bay. That night, he dreamed of being dragged underwater by a mo'o spirit, his lungs filling with sand. When he woke, the fish he'd taken were gone, just empty baskets, and a trail of saltwater footprints across his mat. Historians still argue whether these stories were literal or metaphorical moral tales to enforce sustainable practices or glimpses of something deeper, more spiritual. Maybe both. But the result was the same people followed the rules, because the rules worked. You walk along the edge of the pond where a narrow channel connects it to the open sea. This is the kai'au, a natural waterway that sometimes acts as a second gate. It's wider, more vulnerable, and occasionally, when storms swell, the tide it allows larger fish to enter, or leave, or worse, predators to slip in. Now imagine this. You're a kiai loco, and you wake to find half your pond empty. Not because of poachers, not because of weather, but because a barracuda or small shark found the kai'au and decided your mullet looked tasty. That's not just a bad day, that's a crisis. So how did they manage it? They built breakwaters, narrow rock formations like fingers extending into the ocean, designed to calm the waves before they reached the pond. Some even shaped the reefs themselves, tossing boulders, reinforcing natural curves. Anything to blur the border between chaos and calm. It wasn't just defense. It was diplomacy. Negotiating with the ocean, one stone at a time. You squat at the edge of the channel where the quappa thins into jagged coral and broken shells. A crab skitters sideways, eyeing you with suspicion. Somewhere in the distance, a seabird cries out, and then you hear it, a faint splash. Something large deeper in the pond. U-turn. Could be a fish breaching. could be something hunting. Even inside the pond, threats existed. Invasive species, overpopulation, disease. A bloom of the wrong algae could choke the fish overnight. Too many eels and the juveniles vanish. A blocked makaha and the water goes stagnant. The pond was peaceful, but never effortless. You rise and brush off your hands. This was a system of trust, not control. The pond didn't guarantee abundance. It offered the chance for it if you respected its rhythms. And sometimes the pond refused to cooperate. That's why caretakers left offerings. That's why they sang to the fish. That's why, in the quiet hours before dawn, you might find someone alone by the water's edge, whispering to the ocean, not asking, apologizing. You step back onto the wall, the sky now softening into pre-dawn pink. In the distance, mist hangs low over the far trees. The shark is gone. The pond is still. But the memory of danger lingers. A reminder that while the loco eye was a marvel of human ingenuity, it always existed on borrowed grace. The sea could take back what it gave without notice, without reason. And still, the people built. They watched. They learned. You take one last look at the open channel, then turn back toward the quiet safety of the stones. You follow the curve of the Quappa as the sun finally peaks over the horizon, casting long golden beams across the pond. The water catches the light and glows like liquid amber, revealing shapes beneath silver flashes. Gentle ripples, the lazy flick of a tail. You stop walking. You're not alone. A group of people gathers on a woven mat near the bank. Women, men, children, laughing softly, their hands busy with bundles of tea leaves and banana fronds. A large imu, or earth oven, smolders nearby, its smoky breath curling into the warm morning air. You've stumbled into a fish feast, or perhaps more accurately, a day of harvest. The practice wasn't daily. It was timed like a lunar dance in rhythm with tides, moon phases, and fish maturity. A kiai loco would observe the pond carefully for weeks, noting when fish fattened, when algae flourished, when predators moved on. Then, when the moment was right, they'd gather the community. You ease closer, joining the edge of the group unnoticed. The morning feels ceremonial, even festive. A boy carries a calabash bowl, filled with something sticky and green limu seaweed. A woman peels cooked ulu, its yellow flesh steaming. Someone tosses a fish onto a wooden board, and a knife glides through it in one practiced motion. The fish fat, healthy glistening. No struggle, no chase. Just abundance handed over by the pond. You marvel again at the system. No rods, no nets, no violence. The fish simply reach a size too large to stay, and the people kindly, respectfully take what the pond has prepared. It's like foraging from a garden that grows fish. You glance around and notice that everything here has purpose. Even the scraps from cleaning the fish are tossed into a smaller pit nearby. Later, they'll be composted or returned to the sea as offerings. The bones might become tools. The scales, ornaments. This isn't just food prep. It's a closed-loop system, the kind modern sustainability experts love to talk about. And ancient Hawaiians lived daily. You sit down beside an older woman who's slicing taro into thin rounds. She hums as she works, not acknowledging you, but somehow not minding your presence either. Her hands move with muscle memory, and as she wraps the slices in Thai leaves, she murmurs a few words under her breath. Not loud, not showy, just a chant maybe, a recipe remembered as song. Historians still argue whether fish feasts were strictly ceremonial or also functional. Were they rituals of gratitude, community events, redistribution of wealth? Probably all of the above. The Hawaiian worldview didn't compartmentalize. Everything was interwoven. And speaking of interwoven here comes the poi. A large bowl, lavender and thick, carried by a teenage boy who tries to look casual but is clearly proud of not spilling a drop. Poi made from mashed taro root wasn't just a side dish. It was the centerpiece of the Hawaiian diet, and paired with fresh fish, it made a complete meal nutritionally, culturally, and spiritually. You watch as leaves are unwrapped, steam rising like incense. Fish fillets glisten inside their Thai leaf packets, roasted in the emu alongside yams and coconut pudding. No plastic, no rush. Just food slowly coaxed into being. The best part, no waste. You chew on that thought pun, intended as the feast begins. People eat with their hands, talking softly, passing bowls, licking fingers without shame. Children dash around their mouths full, while elders nod approvingly at the catch. And yet, it's not gluttonous, it's balanced. Only enough fish were taken to feed the people present. The rest left to grow, or to breed, or simply to swim a little longer. You take a piece of roasted fish, tender, smoky sweet from the Thai leaves. It melts in your mouth, and for a moment, your modern brain tries to scan for calories, macronutrients, trace minerals. But the rest of you just savors it. This is what the pond was made for. Not just survival, but shared joy. The kind that roots a people to a place. That turns work into song and harvest into story. You look around at the circle. No one's in a rush. No one's checking a screen. No one's taking photos for the gram. They're just present, fed, grateful. A little girl wanders over to the edge of the pond and tosses a handful of cooked taro into the water. Not for fun, for the fish. A quiet thank you. A little pay it forward to keep the cycle turning. You wonder how many generations have done that, and how many more might if the pond survives. Because, yes, some of these ponds still exist. A few are being restored by local communities, scientists, and cultural leaders. Stones are being restacked. Makaha rebuilt. Songs remembered. It's slow work. But the pond teaches slow. You sit back, belly warm, face glowing from sun and smoke. Somewhere behind you, a conch shell sounds low echoing. A reminder that the sea is always listening. The feast winds down slowly like a tide receding without fuss. People recline on mats, bellies, full voices softened. A few children nap in the shade of challah trees, their cheeks sticky with roasted yam. Others wander back toward the kuapa, trailing fingers through the shallow water. And you linger by the shore, drawn to a faint sound drifting on the wind, a chant, low, rhythmic, almost a hum. You follow it toward a more secluded section of the pond, where the kuapa narrows into a kind of natural cove. The rocks here are darker, worn smooth from centuries of wave and weather, and nestled beneath a jut of stone half hidden by sea grass and ferns is a small carved shrine. Someone stands before it, swaying gently. A man, bare-chested, middle-aged, with a necklace of carved bone. His eyes are closed. He doesn't notice you. Or maybe he does, and simply doesn't mind. His hands move as he chants not grandly, but with the practiced familiarity of someone who has said these words 1,000 times. You don't interrupt. You just watch. The chant isn't long. 2 minutes, maybe 3. Then he opens his eyes, kneels, and offers a small bowl of fermented kalo taro to the base of the shrine. The ocean breeze stirs. A bird calls. And then it's over. He turns to leave and passes you without a word, but with a nod so slight you almost miss it. You sit down where he stood. So this, too, is part of the pond's life offering to the gods. Not to bargain, not to beg, but to acknowledge, to say, we remember you. Many fish ponds had a dedicated deity, often Kuula, the god of fishermen. His image sometimes stood near the makaha, or deep within a grove nearby. His name was whispered during harvests, during storms, during repairs. Some ponds honored Kanaloa, the god of the deep sea, or Laka, guardian of hula, when chants were sung for abundance. And then there were the mo'o. The mo'o were water spirits, mythical lizard beings, often female, who guarded fresh water springs and fish ponds. They weren't evil, but they weren't cuddly either. Cross them, and you might find your pond mysteriously empty. Respect them, and they'd protect your catch from storms, poachers, or worse. One famous mo'o, named Kihawahin, was said to dwell near the fish ponds of Maui, and locals still tell stories of her shimmering form appearing in the shallows to warn of danger. Her pond always well stocked. Coincidence? You decide. Historians still debate whether these deities were literal beliefs or metaphors for environmental knowledge, embodied warnings to maintain balance. But if you ask the people here, it doesn't matter. Belief shapes behavior, and behavior shaped survival. You lean forward, gazing into the dark water. Maybe the gods didn't control the fish. Maybe they were the reminders to keep a humble heart, to share what you catch, to never take more than the pond can give. And there were rules. Many of them. Some fish ponds couldn't be entered on certain moon phases. Some required chants before harvesting. Others had kapu against women entering during their menstrual cycles, believed to disrupt the spiritual energy of the water. These rules might sound strange now, but they weren't about shame. They were about sacred rhythms, about marking boundaries between the everyday and the divine. You trail your fingers along a mossy stone and feel a small crab skitter away beneath your touch. The pond lives even in silence, and it remembers. Offerings weren't limited to gods either. Sometimes fish were gifted to neighboring villages during times of need or given in tribute to Ali. These exchanges weren't just generosity, they were diplomacy, a currency of trust. One pond's abundance could keep peace across an entire valley. You think about that. How a few well-fed fish could prevent war, could preserve families, could maintain alliances. Maybe the real magic wasn't in the pond. It was in the way people used it. You glance again at the shrine. A small bird hops onto its base, pecks at the taro offering, and flutters away. You smile. Even the animals pay their respects. And then movement in the water. A ripple. Then another. 3 fat mullets circle, slowly their fins slicing the surface in lazy arcs. You watch motionless. They're calm, trusting, as if they know this space is for them. Or maybe they're listening too. The chant, though ended, still echoes in your ears. You hum a bar of it softly off-key. The fish vanish beneath the surface, but somehow the pond feels fuller now. Like it's received something, a moment of balance, a breath exchanged. You stand, dust the sand from your legs, and bow awkwardly, sincerely, toward the little shrine. No one's watching, except maybe the pond. You leave the shrine behind, the taste of chant and salt still in your breath, and follow a path that winds along the inner bank of the pond. The stones beneath your feet shift slightly, the soft grind of sand against lava, a constant rhythm as the tide changes pace. Up ahead, two men stand waist-deep in the water, peering down into the murk with intense focus. You stop to watch. One of them gestures, then dips a woven basket trap into the pond with slow, practiced care. A heartbeat later, he lifts it, and inside, wriggling frantically, is a single silver fish caught clean. They laugh not loudly, but with quiet satisfaction. One fish. That's enough. You walk closer. One of the men waves you over and hands you the basket, nodding toward the catch inside. It's a mullet, or amama, one of the pond's most reliable tenants. Plump, sleek, its gills fluttering in slow protest. It looks almost thoughtful, like it knew this moment was coming. You hold the basket carefully, not quite sure whether you're part of the harvest or just lucky to be near it. The man takes the fish, whispers something in Hawaiian, and returns it to the water. You blink. That fish was good-sized, big enough for a meal. But here's the thing. Not every catch is a keeper. The people who manage these ponds knew that taking too much meant starving later. Sometimes, even a perfect fish goes back. Maybe it's needed to spawn. Maybe it's an offering. Or maybe the pond just whispered, "Not this one." You follow them as they wade to the shore. Along the way, one man points out the markings on the quappa stones, subtle grooves, and notches you hadn't noticed before. These aren't just wear from time. They're measuring guides used to track water levels, sediment shifts, and tidal rhythms over the seasons. Like tide clocks written in basalt. You touch one of the grooves. It's shallow, but precise. Spring tide, the man says. That one means the big mullet are near the gate. You nod, even though you barely understand. The information doesn't come from charts or satellites. It comes from memory repetition, observation, passed on by fingers, not textbooks. Historians still argue over how detailed this knowledge system really was. Did they record fish counts and chants? Did each family have their own methods? We may never fully know. So much was lost: colonial suppression, missionary erasure, decades of forced forgetting. But here now, some of it is returning. You feel it in the way these men move, confident, gentle tuned to rhythms deeper than language. You follow them back to a small lean-to built from palm trunks and lashed branches. Inside, a handful of tools hang neatly: basket traps, fishing lines made of coconut fiber, sharpened bone hooks. Nearby, small bowls of crushed taro and mashed ulu sit covered with banana leaves. Fish food. Yes, they feed the fish. This is something you've heard before, but still can't quite believe until you see it. The mullet inside the pond don't just scavenge algae. They're offered meals, on schedule, with care. You watch as one man scoops a handful of the mash, walks to the pond's edge, and scatters it gently into the shallows. Within seconds, the surface churns tiny fish darting upward, mouths wide. You stifle a laugh. It's like feeding pigeons in a city square, except these pigeons live in a palace made of coral and lava. The man smiles. They remember, he says. Feed them here long enough, they wait for you. And you believe him. Because as he tosses another handful, a larger fish glides forward, slower, more deliberate. A milkfish, or awa, silvery, almost translucent in the sunlight. It takes a single bite, then drifts away again, like a ghost. Even the big ones know where the food comes from. You sit near the pond's edge watching this strange ballet. You think of modern fish farming, industrial tanks, automated feeders, cramped quarters. Then you look at this system where fish live in half-wild freedom, grow at their own pace, and even learn where dinner comes from. It's not efficient by modern standards, but it's elegant and far more poetic. A bird calls overhead, and you glance up. An iwa, or frigate bird, circles high above its wings, long and sharp as scythes, watching, waiting. A thief by reputation, but beautiful in flight. One of the men sees it too. He's hoping someone forgets to cover the food, he says, grinning. You watch the bird drift lazily over the pond, then vanish beyond the trees. Even the sky watches the pond, and the pond watches back. You close your eyes just for a moment. You can still hear the splash of feeding fish, the scrape of stone underfoot, the rustle of banana leaves, the scent of brine, mashed taro, and faint wood smoke. The system is whole, not perfect, but complete. And in this moment, so are you. You wake to the sound of laughter, gentle and close, the kind that makes you smile before your eyes even open. A breeze rolls across your skin, warm and scented with salt, and cooked walla sweet potato, probably roasting for a second meal. You sit up slowly and see them 3 women waiting near the pond's edge, up to their knees, skirts hitched slightly, heads bowed in focus. They're gathering seaweed or limu with woven baskets. One hums while she works her voice soft like silk dragged through water. Another pauses to point something out, and all 3 burst into laughter again. It's a peaceful scene, ordinary even. But once it would have been forbidden. You recall the stories how in ancient times, women weren't allowed to fish, nor eat certain fish. The kapu system was strict, dividing food space, even the sea itself. Women could gather limu or tend taro, but stepping into the realm of the lokoia was at least officially reserved for men. But here they are, in the pond, laughing, gathering, participating. You step closer, curiosity tugging at your thoughts. Did the rules change? Or were they always more flexible than the textbooks suggest? One of the women notices you. She waves casually, then holds up a basket half full of reddish-green strands. Limu kohu, she calls. The good kind. Smells like iodine. Like old gods. You kneel near the bank and inhale. She's right. The scent is sharp and wild, something between ocean and blood, like the breath of something ancient and amused. Limu wasn't just a garnish. It was food medicine, even currency. Some varieties were used in ceremonies, others in love potions. One type, known as limu manawia, was famously fed to men before battle. Not for strength, well, maybe that too, but for clarity. Historians still argue how rigid the kapu restrictions were in daily life. Did women secretly fish anyway? Did communities bend the rules quietly? Or were the rituals more about reinforcing cosmic order than literal enforcement? The answers are muddy, like tide pools after a storm. What's clear is that over time the rules did change. With the fall of the Kapu system in the early 1800s, some say overnight, women returned to the pond. Or maybe finally stepped forward. You watch as one of the women leans over fingers combing through seaweed like she's braiding a story. Her motions are slow, reverent. She doesn't tug or pull, just lifts what's ready, what wants to come. Like everything else here, it's not extraction. It's an invitation. They finish gathering and return to shore, laying the limu out to dry on woven mats. The sun is higher now, glinting off the water, and your reflection wavers just below the surface. You wonder if you'd lived here then. Which role would have been yours? Pond guardian, fish whisperer, seaweed gatherer, or maybe just watcher. You stroll farther along the pond, where another group has assembled near the makaha. They're inspecting it, one person submerged to their waist, pulling away driftwood while another calls out tide times and wind direction. It's a team effort. No one's in charge. Everyone knows their part. You hear the words, half-moon rising water juveniles in the channel. This isn't guesswork. It's a science. Just one without lab coats or data sheets. The woman with the seaweed basket walks past you, again smiling. Makaha needs a new tie, she says. Crabs keep nibbling the rope. Crabs, of course. The enemies of pond keepers were rarely dramatic. No sea monsters or pirate raids. Just crabs, storm silt buildup. And time. Time was always the final boss. That's why the knowledge was never written down. It was lived, learned by doing. Your teacher was the water, your textbook the moon, your homework the feel of your feet in the silt. A boy nearby sings softly as he hauls a log into place beside the gate. The lyrics are nonsense or maybe ancient. A remnant of something his grandmother sang while patching nets or feeding fish. A thread of memory stretched between generations like the ropes binding the makaha. You glance up. The women are gone now, their baskets empty, but a faint scent of limu lingers. A reminder. The pond changes. The rules change. The people change. But the rhythm, that remains. You kneel beside the pond and trail your fingers through the water. It's warmer now, clearer. You can see the small fish below, darting through the shadows, unbothered by your presence. Born in salt, raised in silence, living on the edge of myth and algae, you close your eyes and listen to wind in the trees, to the slosh of water through the makaha, to the memory of laughter echoing from the women who gathered what was once forbidden. And in that sound, something ancient smiles. You rise from the water's edge and continue along the pond's outer wall, feeling the stones shift gently beneath your steps. The morning is brighter now. Sunlight cuts clean across the surface, illuminating every glinting scale, every darting ripple. It looks peaceful, serene. But this calm you're learning is always negotiated. Because the pond has enemies. And no, not just the sharks or crabs. Sometimes the threats wear unexpected faces. You round the bend and find a group of people huddled around a breach in the kuapa. A chunk of the wall has collapsed inward, letting brackish water churn against a narrow stretch of the bank. It's not a catastrophe yet, but if left unchecked, it'll grow. You hurry to help. Storm surge. One man mutters, shoving a lava rock back into place. Big tide last night. You learn quickly. Grab rocks, stack low and tight, wedge them with coral and shell. There's no cement here, just balance, leverage, and teamwork. But then someone shouts. There they point beyond the breach. A wet trail in the mud. Something's been here. A Wathif, another mutters, eyes narrowing. Not a person, an animal. Probably a dogfish, or worse, a clever monk seal that's learned to slip through weakened walls to snack on the pond's fattest fish. You peer into the brush and see nothing. But the prints are fresh, and the damage real. It's easy to romanticize the Lokoya as a tranquil wonder, and it is, but it's also constant maintenance, constant defense. You spend the next hour helping patch the wall. Sweat drips from your forehead, hands covered in silt and barnacle grit. But it's good work, satisfying. The pond feels more like a partner than a place now. Something you take care of, not just for what it gives, but because it exists at all. Then someone mentions sea pigs. You blink. Sea pigs. He laughs. That's what my tututu called the monk seals. Sneaky, greedy, but sacred too. That's the paradox. Even the creatures that threaten the pond are part of the story. They're not villains, they're reminders that the system must flex, must bend, must adapt. You finish your section of the wall and sit back. Your hands are raw, your arms sore, but the breach is sealed for now. The water stills. A few small fish nose the edge, curious, brave, and then a girl comes running down the path, barefoot and breathless. Tsunami, she yells. Everyone freezes. Your heart drops. But someone gently waves her off. Drill, he says with a small smile. School's practicing. You exhale, but only a little, because the real ones do come. And when they do, no wall, no chant, no offering will stop them. Many ponds were destroyed this way, washed out overnight, swallowed, whole kuapa ripped apart, fish flung into the trees, stones scattered like breadcrumbs for gods. Some were rebuilt, others were not. You follow the others inland, past older sections of the pond. Here, the walls are lower, more weathered. Some have collapsed completely, overtaken by mangroves, their roots snaking like fingers across lava and silt. These invasive trees weren't always here. They arrived in the 20th century, introduced by well-meaning foresters. They spread quickly, and once they took root in abandoned ponds, they were almost impossible to remove. You stare at one pond, choked with roots, water barely visible beneath the green. This place once fed dozens. Now it's a ruin. Historians still debate how many ponds were lost during the plantation era when land was seized or repurposed. Water diverted walls leveled for cane and cattle. Some say 90% of Oahu's ponds were destroyed or abandoned between 1850 and 1950. You walk through the silence. No fish, no gates, just ghosts. But not all is gone. One older man squats by the remains of a makaha, running his hand along the wood. This pond, he says, quietly used to sing. You tilt your head. When the tide rose just right, the water rushed through the gate so fast it whistled. My grandfather said it was the voice of the mo'o. Said if you listened, it told you how many fish were coming. You close your eyes, and for just a second, you swear you hear it too. A faint, breathy note in the back of your skull, like a flute made of tide. But it's gone. Still, you file it away. The ponds remember, even the broken ones. You help the others Mark the damaged sections with rope and small flags. Restoration takes time, they tell you. Sometimes years, sometimes generations. But every stone returned to place is a verse in the old chant, a syllable in a language the land once spoke fluently. You glance back at the rebuilt wall. The spot you helped repair holds strong for now. The water is calm again. The fish return as they always do, but only if you're willing to keep watch, to patch, to feed, to remember. You return to the main pond just as the light begins its golden turn early afternoon. Soft shadows, everything gleaming like it's been rinsed clean. You're tired, sun-warmed, and streaked with dried mud from your earlier work. And yet, as you walk along the wall again, a quiet energy stirs inside you. The pond has a rhythm now. One you're starting to feel in your bones. Ahead, perched on a flat rock at the edge of the quappa, sits a woman. Elderly, barefoot, her silver hair braided with a strip of red fabric. She holds no tools, just a small wooden bowl in her lap and a soft smile on her face. You slow your pace instinctively. She beckons without a word. You sit beside her. The breeze tickles the water. Below the pond, breathes in waves and out again. I watch the tides, she says, not looking at you. They tell stories. You glance at the water, not expecting it to say much. She chuckles. You're listening with your eyes, she says gently. Try your skin. And so, you close your eyes. You let the breeze pass across your arms. Let the warm air rise off the rocks. Let the rhythmic lap of waves press against your ankles. You feel that she asks, a change, barely there. You nod uncertain. The moon pulls harder this week, she says. It's spawning time. You blink. Of course, the lunar cycle. These ponds didn't just trap fish randomly. They worked because the Hawaiians understood seasonal patterns. They knew which fish spawned under which moon, which winds warned of changing currents, which birds signaled shifts in water temperature, and they sang about it. The woman hums softly now, a tune without words. A lullaby for fish, maybe. Or for you. She taps the wooden bowl. Inside, pressed neatly against a tie leaf, lies a small bundle of salt and limu. Old families, she says, used to sing to the pond like this. A chant for every moon. For spawning, for feeding, for death. You're quiet, respectful. She continues. The pond listens, but only if we do. Historians still argue over the scientific validity of these chants. Were they empirical data wrapped in metaphor, oral environmental records, or simply cultural poetry? She'd probably laugh at that debate, because for her, and for many, these songs aren't about accuracy. They're about relationship. Singing the seasons wasn't about precision. It was about presence. She starts to chant softly. The words are Hawaiian, flowing like water over stone. You don't understand them, but something ancient stirs in your chest. It's not meaning, it's memory. You listen, and the pond listens back. A heron cries in the distance. A sudden splash, then silence again. Somewhere near the makaha, the water rushes a little louder. The chant fades. The woman sits still for a moment, eyes closed. Then she reaches into the bowl and tosses a pinch of salt into the pond. The wind shifts. You shiver. Seasons turning, she says quietly. She doesn't elaborate. She doesn't need to. You sit with her a while longer, watching the water. Every few moments, she points there a shimmer of fish. There, a dark patch of algae blooming too fast. They're a cloud of silt stirred by something large. Each gesture is a sentence in a language you're just beginning to read. She speaks again. The old Kia'i Loko. They could tell the health of the whole island just by watching one pond. You nod, because suddenly that feels right. She turns to you, finally eyes sharp despite her age. Want to learn how to predict spawning? You smile, yes. And so she teaches you, not with diagrams or vocabulary lists, but with sensory memory. She has you dig your toes into the silt to feel its temperature. She tells you which bird calls mean the fish are active. She shows you how to read the ripples left by wind versus those left by tails. You take it all in, not as facts, as rhythms. The tide rises slightly. She nods at the water. Tonight, she says they'll jump. Who? Mullet. Always the mullet first, then the awa. If the moon's right, you look up. The sky is clearing again. No clouds. The moon will rise full and clean. And the fish, they'll know. You say nothing for a while. Just breathe. And then she hums again. It's not just song. It's inheritance. You don't know the words, but in time you will. Night falls again. Not abruptly, but like a warm cloth being laid gently across your shoulders. The sun dips into the horizon, setting the pond aglow in hues of bronze and indigo. The breeze shifts, cooler now, more thoughtful. The moon rises slowly, full and round, casting a path of silver straight across the water like a private invitation. You stand alone near the makaha watching. The tide's coming in, and right on cue, they arrive. The water stirs. First a few gentle swirls, then a splash, a shimmer, a flurry of silver arcs breaking the surface and falling back with barely a sound. The ama, the striped mullet, are leaping tonight. It's not panic, not escape. It's spawning, celebration even. You watch in awe as the fish leap and circle in tight formations, flickering like coins tossed into a wishing pool. The elder woman's words return to you. Tonight, they'll jump. She was right. You squat by the edge, utterly still, hoping not to disturb them. The mullet twist through the water with purpose, as if chasing some invisible current only they can sense. The moonlight reveals them in flashes, tails high, mouths, open eyes wide and shining. Here it is, the mystery at the heart of the loco. Why do they come back? These fish aren't fenced in. They're not caged. And yet, generation after generation, they return. Drawn by instinct, maybe, or ancestral memory, or something older than either. Historians still argue over this. Is it the temperature of the brackish water? The precise mineral balance? Do they smell the algae they grew up on? Or follow the rhythms of the moon and current like fishy astronomers? You don't know. But as you watch them leap again and again, you begin to suspect the answer is less about biology and more about belonging. These fish were raised in the pond, fed here, safe here. When it's time to spawn, they don't seek somewhere new. They come home. You lean back against the warm rock wall, letting the sounds of the night wrap around you. The distant slap of fish tails, the hush of wind in pandanus leaves. Somewhere, someone plays a nose flute. Just a few notes, soft and wistful. In this light, everything feels softer, rounder. The world takes off its sharp corners and hums itself to sleep. You remember now that some ponds were built not just for food, but for legacy. Family lines would steward the same pond for generations. Grandparents teaching grandchildren how to sing to the fish, how to mend the makaha, how to interpret the tides like a dream. You close your eyes and imagine being born to such a lineage. No textbooks, no tests, just a slow apprenticeship to water and moonlight, a ritual of watching. You stretch your legs and walk slowly around the perimeter. A torch burns on a stone platform, ahead flickering shadows across the quappa. A small gathering has formed, just a few people seated in a circle, sharing tea and soft laughter. You approach quietly. No one speaking loudly. They don't need to. Tonight isn't about noise. Someone offers you a cup of warm mamaki tea brewed from native leaves. You nod gratefully and sit. They're not discussing fish. Not directly. One person is retelling a dream about their grandmother walking through a restored pond, placing small flags made of Thai leaves into the silt. Another recalls a chant their uncle used to sing whenever a new makaha was installed. These aren't lessons, they're transmissions. A girl, no older than 10, begins humming quietly, and without cue, the others join in. A melody with no words. Just notes, rising and falling, like the tide itself. You sip the tea, earthy, slightly sweet. Steam curls in the moonlight. You think again about the fish, how they came back. Not because they were forced, because the pond called them, and it had always called them. A man across the circle speaks softly. You can't make fish stay, but you can give them a reason not to leave. Everyone nods. The truth lands gently, undeniable. You wonder how many systems in the world are built on the opposite belief control force extraction. But here, everything thrives because it's invited to. You gaze across the water. The fish are quieter now. Their leaping has slowed. But they're still there. You feel them beneath the surface, gliding silently in the moonlight, the same way their ancestors did, the same way perhaps they always will. And you're no longer a visitor. You're part of the pond's memory now. A pair of hands begins to drum lightly on a gourd, a heartbeat rhythm that matches the pulse of the sea. No one dances, not yet. But a few heads begin to sway. Eyes close, you exhale, and the pond exhales with you. By morning, the pond has returned to stillness. The silver moon has slipped behind the cliffs, and a soft lavender sky stretches above like a clean bedsheet pulled over a tired world. Mist hovers low over the water, curling around the kuapa like fingers that don't want to let go. You walk the wall slowly. Each stone feels familiar now. Each gap, each curve, each ripple of water beside it holds a story you know by heart. The fish are quieter, hidden deep below the surface after their lunar ballet. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows, not for you, but for the pond, as if to say, "We survived another night." You reach a section of the wall where several people are gathering tools, baskets, wooden levers, folded leaves. Today, they're making repairs. Not because something's broken, but because something always will be. The wall sinks, the sea rises, stones shift, and so the work never ends. One person greets you with a nod, offers you a bundle of lahala cord. You accept it without thinking. No one tells you what to do. You already know. You find a loose patch between two lava stones and kneel beside it. Tie, wedge, adjust. The sun climbs higher and the stones grow warm under your fingers. And for the first time, it feels like yours, not ownership, but participation. Belonging. A young boy beside you chats happily as he works. He tells you he's learning the chants. He recites fish names like a litany. Amama awa ahole hole. You ask which is his favorite. None of them. He grins. All of them. Together, they tell you how the water feels. You smile. That makes sense. In the old days, some kia'i loko were selected not for strength or age, but for their sensitivity, their ability to read the invisible moods of the pond when it was restless, when it was hungry, when it needed to be left alone. That skill wasn't taught. It was absorbed. Historians still debate whether such intuition was real or romanticized. Could someone really feel when fish were spawning or when storms were coming? Was it instinct or training? But watching the boy work, you understand the truth lies somewhere in between. He ties the cord with practiced care, pauses to adjust the alignment of a stone, then says casually, "It's not just for fish, you know." "What isn't, you ask?" This he gestures to everything. It's for people too. And suddenly you see it. The pond isn't just a food source. It's a mirror, a slow, reflective space where a community sees itself patient, tuned to nature full of rhythm and responsibility. The pond teaches more than sustenance. It teaches how to be, how to live with just enough, how to listen more than act, how to remember things that can't be Googled. Nearby, two elders sit beneath a thatched shelter, weaving baskets and murmuring softly. One's missing a tooth. The other wears a faded shirt with a cartoon octopus on it. They're not nostalgic. They're living history. Each story, they share each joke. Each correction passed gently to a younger hand rebuilds the pond just as surely as any stone. You overhear one say, "The fish don't forget where they were raised," and maybe neither do people. You look out across the pond. It glimmers faintly under the now bright sun. A heron stalks near the edge. Small fish flicker like sparks. The makaha pulses with life. The entire system hums low and constant, like a drumbeat under your ribs. Later, when the repairs pause, someone brings out a ukulele. Another person hums an old tune. You recognize the rhythm from the chant you heard earlier. The melody has changed just a little. Faster now. A celebration. A baby crawls toward the water. His mother scoops him up just in time, laughing. The boy doesn't cry. He just stares at the pond, wide-eyed, like it's something he recognizes. And maybe he does, because the pond is memory, family, future. And today, it's healing. You rise to your feet, brushing sand from your hands. Your back aches, but your heart feels quiet. As you walk the final stretch of wall, you pass the spots you now know. The makaha that sings in spring tide, the rock where fish leap under the full moon, the shrine where salt is offered, the place where laughter returned to the water. Each one holds a fragment of something bigger, and all of it holds you. You don't say goodbye to the pond. You just listen, and in the lap of water, against the stones in the wind, brushing the surface, in the hush of fish, gliding below, it answers. You return one final time to the kuapa in the golden hush of late afternoon. The sky above you is broad and endless clouds smeared into brushstrokes by the trade winds. The pond lies still, no feasting, no chanting, no repairs, just the sound of water breathing against stone like a sleeping giant at peace. You sit down on your favorite spot, the smooth rock, just beside the makaha, where the water always curls into a tiny eddy before sliding out to sea. You rest your hand there, fingers barely skimming the surface. It's warmer now, shallower too. Low tide, a quieter time. The fish still circle. You see the flicker of tails, the occasional glint of scale. But they're not in a rush. Neither are you. You think about what this place has taught you. It was never about the fish. It was about everything that holds them, the hands that fed them, the stones that shaped their world, the songs that warned the sea not to take too much, the people who trusted nature enough to build something that didn't fight the tide, but danced with it. A young girl walks past, carrying a bowl of mashed ulu, tossing it into the shallows with practiced flicks of the wrist. The fish respond instantly, breaking the surface with tiny, grateful mouths. She kneels, hums a few lines of a chant you've begun to recognize, and smiles when she catches your eye. No one taught her that rhythm. She simply absorbed it. That's how this knowledge survives, not in books, but in bodies. In footsteps retraced. In stories repeated. In kuapa, rebuilt stone by stone, year by year, not out of duty, but love. Because the pond is not just a machine, it is a relationship. And relationships take tending. That's why people come back. Why fish come back. You glance out toward the open sea beyond the gate. It's endless out there, wild, magnificent, dangerous. But the fish pond was never about closing off the world. It was about creating a safe return, a boundary where life could grow without being taken too soon. You let the wind pass through you. Historians still debate whether ancient Hawaiians considered themselves farmers, fishermen, ecologists, engineers. But here, by the edge of the loco, those labels dissolve. They were something else entirely. Something we barely have words for. They were listeners. You lie back on the stone. Your hands still smell faintly of limu and sun. Your ears ring with the echoes of nose flutes and soft chants. And beneath all of it is the steady, eternal hush of water, sliding through a wooden gate. You wonder what the pond remembers about you. Maybe just this, that you came, that you listened, that you fed the fish without asking for one in return. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. So now, as the sun disappears and the stars reclaim the sky, you let your breath grow slower. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts follow the tide out away toward the reef. You don't need to hold on to any of it now. Not the names of the fish, not the chants or the old debates or the measurements carved into stone. The pond will hold them for you. All you have to do is rest. Imagine that water again, gentle, warm, brushing against your ankles as you stand alone on the quappa under a full moon. The fish below glide quietly, weaving between shadows. The rocks beneath you are cool and steady. Around you, the ocean whispers, not in words, but in rhythm. Everything is moving, but nothing is rushing. You are part of it now, no longer the observer. You are the stone in the wall, the hand feeding the fish, the chant murmured to the tide. Let that rhythm carry you. Let it rock you, like the sea rocks the gate. Let your thoughts drift and scatter like limu on the current. Let your body sink into the quiet like a stone returning to the wall. You don't need to know what comes next. The pond remembers for you. Close your eyes. The fish are still swimming. The water is still warm. And the world just for tonight